War Stories brought to you by Gary Gruner Chevrolet, Buick GMC in Madras.
1 out of every 7 Central Oregonians is a veteran. In our weekly War Stories series, we introduce you to the stories of Central Oregon War veterans, some who made it back from their war and some who didn't. Tonight, we introduce you to the story of World War II Army veteran Joe Sharpe.
I was born August 6, 1925 in Leakesville, North Carolina. I was the middle child of 3. I completed the 3rd and 4th grade in the same year. And I graduated from high school after only 10 years of schooling. And that's why I entered college in 1941 at the age of 16. It was on December the 23rd, 1943 that I was inducted into the Army. I completed my basic training as a stevedore to load and unload ships. That was what our company was trained to do. January of '45, they sent our unit, which was a company, up to an airfield on the outskirts of Liège, Belgium. And there we loaded artillery shells onto C-47 transport planes to be flown over to the advancing forces. They were getting close to Berlin about that time. I was in the hold of a ship listening to the radio, and I heard an announcement that an atomic bomb had been dropped. You know, I didn't know what it was all about, you know. And then eventually I learned that it was a huge explosion. Did a stint of stateside duty as a military policeman in Harlem, New York. President Truman issued an executive order that called for the fair treatment of all armed forces. And my enlistment was up in September of '48, so it was apparent to me being a member of the armed forces provided for me a better chance of enjoying my birthright civil rights as a soldier first and foremost. So I re-enlisted and decided that I would then make a career of the military. But whenever we got into the communities around the post in which we were stationed, we of course could not go to restaurants. We had to ride in segregated conveyances such as trains, buses. And as we sat down at the table to be served, the waiter came over and looked at us and looked at me. "Are you Puerto Rican?" And of course I said, "No, I'm African American," or Negro at that time. And he says, "We don't serve Negroes here." So there I was on the outskirts of Walter Reed Hospital in Washington, D.C., or on the periphery, that I was denied service in a restaurant because of my race. And that was just one example, you know. Was sent overseas and assigned to an honor guard for the Army headquarters there at Heidelberg, Germany, and then was sent back overseas, where I joined the artillery unit during the time of the Cold War and the Berlin airlift. And after that, I was sent back to the States to Fort Sill, and then I received assignment as an ROTC instructor at my alma mater, North Carolina A&T. And as I walked into the door, there sat this beautiful lady on the right, and he introduced me to Faye. And of course, history is what follows, you know. We got married. We've been married now 57 years. I think the military and my experiences in the military gave me a sound foundation for my life in later life. I'm proud about the fact that every person in our family was able to get a graduate degree, a master's degree. My 2 daughters, my wife and I both. I could not have imagined back in North Carolina in the 1940s that life would have turned out for me as it has, and that I would have lived as long as I lived to be 92 years old. Beautiful. Wouldn't take $1 million for it.
Thanks to Joe for sharing his story, and a special thanks to Gary Gruner Chevrolet Buick GMC for sponsoring War Stories and giving us the time and resources to tell the stories of Central Oregon's war veterans every Monday night on Central Oregon Daily.